Hello, welcome to Peter Rollins HQ. Peter Rollins. Peter Rollins? My goodness. Take two. Welcome to Peter Rollins HQ. This is part two of the theme that I started the other day. I think I said to you that I would pop in tomorrow or yesterday and do something else, but I didn't. So if you were sitting on Facebook waiting for me to come on and drop some pearls of wisdom, I apologize. I was being lazy, but I am here today. I'm just back from having given a talk in LA with some friends and very cool people. So I'm back in my house. Got a slightly different angle today because I need to be charging my iPhone, so I'm beside a plug. Have we got anybody watching so far? Anybody in the room with me? I always feel like Facebook Live is like you're in my living room and I'm in your living room. So please do say hi. Tell me where you're listening in from. We've had lots of people from the US. We have people all over Europe. Lots of people from the Netherlands. Crazy thing is, nobody knows who I am anywhere in the world except in the Netherlands. People like me out there. I've got a couple of books, one book translated, a second book being translated. So maybe I have to move to the Netherlands, learn Dutch. Okay. Look, thankfully some people there's Joseph. Hey, Joseph. There's some people starting to say hello. I was feeling lonely for a second. It's like nobody's out there. Melbourne, Florida. I'm sorry, Christian. Melbourne isn't in Florida. Melbourne is in Australia. You're just all messed up. I apologize. Hey, James, how's it going? Good to see you. Who else? Oh, there's Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Lots of usual suspects, I'm telling you. My goodness, we're going to have to do a Facebook Live all together because it seems like a few of you have been following along live with these. Oh, there's someone from Germany. Hey, how's it going? Germany, the home of theology. Some people are asking me if I have anything translated in German, and I don't, but I'm really keen to do that. I'm actually talking to someone at the moment about translating my works into French, so that might be happening. But hey, if the Germans are the theological ones among us. So 2 days ago, I talked a little bit about the idea of the other being a subject that demands our response. There is this infinite demand from the other, combined with absolute responsibility that we have to take for not knowing exactly what we should do in any political situation or in a relationship or whatever, not quite knowing what the loving thing is to do, but still having to do something and having to own up when it goes wrong and also be happy when it goes right on occasion. And I talked about the technology of theology as liturgy. And liturgy is a technology that cultivates a sensitivity to this call of the other and draws us into a place where we can take responsibility for our acts, that it doesn't think for us, doesn't give us the answers, doesn't kind of nail things down, but rather helps us to confront our freedom and our responsibility. There you go. That's what we did yesterday, easy peasy, or the day before yesterday, very sorry. Today, I just want to briefly reflect on a second part of liturgy as this technology to cultivate a sensitivity of the self, to cultivate a sensitivity to the other, this weird weekly ritual that we do. What at its best should we be getting out of it? Now, of course, I sometimes have to say this, I don't say it enough, but when I'm talking about liturgy, people then immediately think that I'm talking about what happens on a Sunday morning. And you know what? Sometimes it does happen on a Sunday morning, but often at a church, but often it's not. I mean, I'm talking about a type of space, a type of theological space, but I don't know if it often happens or needs to happen at all in a church environment. So anyway, I just want to say that, because whenever people hear the word liturgy, it's a very religious term and it has a certain connotation. So anyway, today I want to talk about rituals. rituals. Liturgy is a type of ritual. So what kind of ritual is it, or what kind of ritual should it be? Just for clarity, I'm going to define two different types of ritual. I'm going to look at rituals that help to cover over our unknowing, our anxieties, and our sufferings, and rituals that help bring them to the surface, right? So you could say a lot of religious liturgies, a lot of religious traditions are a type of mythology. And a mythology is a story that covers over the cracks of our unknowing. It gives us some sort of sense of place and purpose in our lives. And from very early on, we want that in our lives. Of course we do. We are terrified. I mean, go back to being a kid. Being a kid is terrifying. You're in a crazy world where everything is huge. I mean, everything is huge to me because I'm still small. But whenever you're a kid, you're even smaller. You're tiny. It's frightening. You're experiencing fears. You're experiencing explosions in your stomach that you don't even have a name for, which hunger, pain, coldness, overheating. You can't control most of these things. You're fully reliant on other people. It's a scary time. This is why most kids are totally obsessive, right? Obsessive compulsive. Kids want the same story read to them every night. Bam, 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 bam. They want to watch the same movie. I don't know how you used to do it as parents. Like we have to watch Frozen 100 times, right? Because the kid wants the same thing, right? The same song again and again. Or has to touch taps the same amount of times. Or has to have teddy bears lined up in a certain way. As children, most of us are obsessives. And these are rituals that help us cope with a crazy world that we cannot understand, that is terrifying. And that's fine and that's useful. And in very early Facebook Lives, I think I talked about this, but about how when you're a kid, having that type of order, it's fine, it's useful. The problem with it, there's a few problems with it. One of the problems is simply that, you can't grow up having security blankets and having these obsessive compulsions because the world is not as forgiving as your parents, right? You won't be able to phone into work and say, I'm really sorry, I couldn't get into work today. I know there was a $10 million deal and the CEO had just flown in from South Africa, but oh my goodness, there were so many cracks on the pavement. And, obviously I'm not going to walk on the cracks, so I had to stay at home, right? You're going to get fired. These obsessive compulsive things can get in the way of life. And any of us who have obsessive compulsions know that. You might love to have a clean house and be even a little bit obsessive about it. That's totally fine, right? But if your obsession with having a clean house stops you from going out, you can't go out in the evening, or you can't invite people over, or it's always playing on your mind, then, it's destructive for you. It's not something good. It's something that's damaging. So we have these obsessive rituals from when we're young, and what we do is we try to help children look at what those rituals mean. So for example, a child has to have all the teddy bears lined up in a certain way. So you eventually ask why. And maybe the child says, well, I'm scared of the monster and the teddy bears protect me from the monster. You go, okay, what's the monster? Well, the monster comes when daddy's at work. And you go, okay, daddy works on the oil rigs and he's away for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. And actually what's behind the ritual is a fear of the loss of the father. Maybe, that the father doesn't love the little girl or the little boy. And that's what's behind the obsessive compulsive behavior, right? So then you can work it out and you can start to say, well, daddy loves you and daddy goes to work because he wants to look after you. And you help the child deal with the anxiety that the ritual is covering over. And when you do this, the ritual begins to diminish. You don't need it as much because the thing that the ritual is solving isn't there. So therefore, you don't really need it anymore, right? So this is part of growing up. Now, you could say that a lot of religious rituals act in a similar kind of way. We're thrown into the world. We have lots of questions. We've got anxieties and fears. And religious rituals can often help cover over some of those. When life is difficult, people often go to church. and they engage in certain activities and they feel better for it. Nothing wrong with that at all. But if you're not looking at what is underlying the ritual, if you're not looking at what that ritual covers over, the cracks that it papers over, then eventually it becomes problematic. You know, you have to go more obsessive, you have to go every week. There's people who go to church every week, honestly. I know them, like every week. Can you believe it? And you know what church is like. It's awful half the time. I have to go every week, every Sunday, right? And it becomes something, you know, you do. But, so what's the alternative? Well, in a sense, there are rituals that don't cover over our anxiety and our suffering. There can be rituals that actually help to bring those to the surface, that help to bring them up in a way that we can cope with. This is why I'm always advocating singer-songwriters and comedians and storytellers, because often when we listen to a singer-songwriter, we have a ritual where we go and we listen once a week to, you know, some musician. That ritual, if it's a good singer-songwriter, they can help us look at the pain in our own lives. They can bring it to the surface in a way that is not going to destroy us. I was talking to an artist this morning, a very talented artist, who does these incredible kind of sculptures, human sculptures, wrapping people up, almost like death shrouds, and taking their picture. And when you look at these pictures that he creates, this guy called Robert Mack, Robert M-A-C-K, Robert Mack, he, when you look at these images he creates, you're confronted by beauty, sexuality, and death. But there's a skull-like, death-like quality to these pictures. That's what great artists often do, is they confront us with the things that we'd rather hide from. So going to an art gallery once a week can be a ritual in which, you know, looking at the art helps to draw out, you know, your own mourning, your own finitude, your own questions and concerns politically and culturally, right? So these two types of ritual. Now, the reason why we have rituals that attempt to cover over our suffering, anxiety, and pain is because we feel like we're unraveling at times. I love this word unraveling. You know, you hear people say, I'm unraveling. My life is unraveling. Everything's coming apart. To unravel means to pull apart. And, you know, one can feel like, I used to believe everything. I used to go to church every week. I used to thought I had it all right. And then someone I love broke my heart. Or, you know, I found out that I was ill and I was dying. Or I lost my job or whatever. And suddenly I realized that the things weren't as good as I was pretending. Or maybe nothing happened. Maybe I got everything I wanted. I had the money. I had the relationship. I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do. I got the kids, the white picket fence. I got it all. And now I've just got deadness inside. I just feel dead, right? I'm unraveling. And so the rituals try to cover over that until they don't anymore. And they just don't work. And so what do you do? Well, interestingly, the word raveling means exactly the same as unraveling. To unravel and to ravel are exactly the same thing. There must be a term for that, but I don't know what the term is. And I remember actually I did a service at a festival in England, where we had this big auditorium. And in this auditorium, we put this woman on some step ladders so that she looked like she was 20 feet tall, because we put a dress on her that reached right to the ground, made out of second-hand sweaters we got from an Oxfam. And then we got all these threads from that dress, and they went across the auditorium to people who were knitting, frantically knitting new clothes out of the unraveling of this amazing dress. And the first half of this evening, this event, was about unraveling. Looking about how our lives unravel, our beliefs unravel, our bodies unravel. And then the second half was about raveling. And what we were doing was we were saying that you can't get away from unraveling. You can't get away from doubt, unknowing, anxieties of various kinds. You know, we're all like the kid in a crazy universe that's sometimes terrifying. And we all try to avoid that. And secretly, unconsciously, we flee death because we don't want to look at those things. If our father is ill, and my father's very ill at the moment, and it's very hard to visit him because, I'm confronted with my own finitude in his eyes. So all of us as human beings, we can feel this in various ways. We can run from it, and we are terrified of the unraveling that might happen. But the trick is this, that actually if we confront those parts of ourselves, and we bring them to the surface, we start to find freedom from them. People say to me, okay, after the deconstruction, what do you reconstruct? And what I want to say to people is, well, no, after the unraveling is raveling. It's where you take the frustrations and the difficulties of life and you find energy out of those. You find potential out of those. The frustrations of existence, you somehow just change your position towards them and you use them as a fuel. And I've talked about Camus and the rebel before, but the rebel is the figure who is always kind of dissatisfied and wants something else. But the rebel is the one who takes that dissatisfaction and enjoys it and loves it. And the act of rebellion, political and cultural and religious, is one that brings life and freedom and joy and liberation. In some senses, nothing has changed, but everything has changed. So in this second part, all I want to say is that the technology of radical theology is a liturgy that creates rituals that bring to the surface our doubts, our sufferings, our guilt, all of our anxieties about being human. But they do it in a way through the sermon, the music, art, poetry, comedy. They bring that to the surface in a way that we can handle. They bring the truth into the light of day so that we're set free. Because when we push it down, that's when it destroys us. And the analogy I use for this is, of course, the Irish pub. You go to the Irish pub in Galway in Ireland, for example, and you sit there and you'll see something very different from a regular nightclub. You go to a nightclub, you have alcohol, you have music, you have people, but the alcohol is there to get drunk and forget about things. The music is so loud it gets you to forget, and you have superficial conversations. Do you go to the little bar in Galway and you have a pint and you sit and you see people talk about their week? And there's music, but the music doesn't drown out your life. The music connects you with your life. By the end of the night, everyone's singing together with their own instruments that they've brought. In a nightclub, everyone looks happy, but at 2 a.m., oh my goodness, it feels like the most depressing place ever. It feels like if you turned on the lights, turned off the music, and asked everybody to look at each other in the eyes just for 10 seconds, that you'd have a room full of people crying, you know? Whereas you go to an Irish pub at 2 a.m., and that's when it's getting started. The lock-in, where everyone's got their instruments out and are singing folk songs. But yet, that Irish pub is a place where you've talked about your joys and your sufferings. You've talked about what's going on in your family life. You've talked about politics. You've thought about that stuff. And in doing that, you become freer and happier, and you cultivate a more graceful and a more graceful person, and hopefully also someone who is more concerned with the world and with helping. And that's what this liturgy is about. It's about being like the Irish pub, using various tools so that people who feel like they're unraveling discover that they're actually raveling. And you can revel in the fact that you're raveling. Revel in the fact that you have doubts and unknowing, and sometimes things seem too much. And yet take that on, find ways through art, through liturgy, to say yes to that, to use it as a fuel to say amen to life, rather than to be crushed by it. Okay, there you go. There's some thoughts on raveling and unraveling. Let's see if anyone's got any questions, thoughts. Let's see. Sergey, my opinion, we are living in an ongoing apocalypse, a revelation. All is about to be revealed. We are living in an ongoing apocalypse. I like that phraseology. What I hear you saying in that is that we live with an openness to the new. Because apocalypse literally means the incoming of what you could never expect. Sergey knows this, but the incoming of what you could never imagine, what's called the impossible in philosophy. The possible is what you can put in your diary. You know, oh yeah, tomorrow I'm going to meet my friend, the next day I'm going to do this or do that. The apocalyptic moments are the moments that you never saw coming. You fall in love, you fall out of love, someone dies, something happens, bam, you just never saw it coming. And it changes the course of your life. And for someone like John Caputo, religion, instead of being about closing down the apocalypse, those moments, it's about generating a sensitivity to those moments and cultivating a courage to face those moments and to see in those moments possibilities for new worlds, even though sometimes those new worlds might be disastrous. Let's see. Oh yeah, James saying sorry to hear that about my dad. Yeah, I mean he's doing okay, to be honest. I don't want to bring a real downer to this, but he's doing okay. But it's sadly, one of those things. I'm hoping that death doesn't happen to me, but it seems like it runs in my family. Like everybody in the past seems to have done it eventually. So it's a terrifying thing, and but facing it is important. I'm actually having anxiety. I don't get anxiety at all, actually. I've never had anxiety in my life, but I noticed a few nights last week I woke up with a kind of anxiety, and I reflected on the dreams. It's important to do that sometimes. And I realized that I was thinking about my own finitude more, because obviously I'm facing the finitude of my family. Okay, let's see. James says, what kind of liturgies would these be? Can creating art, which invites people into the freedom you speak of, be the liturgies? For example, books, music. Yeah, this is interesting, James. Like when I talk about liturgy, I love the term because, as I talked about the day before yesterday, things like science has technology, psychoanalysis has a technology, philosophy used to be a technology. Now it's just an academic thing. That's why I've never done a day's work in a university in my life. As in, I've given lectures occasionally, but I've never worked full time for a university, because for me philosophy is a technology. And although I've got the utmost respect for many of my friends who are in the academic institution, people like Socrates are the way I think philosophy should be done, on the streets and on Facebook Live events. But yeah, so liturgy for me is we need these spaces in our lives where we confront the ghosts, the darkness, the difficulties, where we use art and music and various techniques to bring that up. I think that the church can provide some of that. It often doesn't, but it can happen anywhere. You can have different liturgies, different ways of, as I say, going to an art gallery once a week might be your way of kind of doing that. It happens in lots of different ways. And one ritual can help somebody and not the other. There's that old story about two camels being led to market, one with a ton of cotton on its back and one with a ton of salt on its back. Now, it's overflowing with water from the previous day, this lake, and the two camels have to go through the lake to get to market. When the two camels come out, the one with the salt on its back feels amazing, but the one with the cotton on its back drowns, because the water dissolves the salt and it makes sodden the cotton. In other words, you can both go through the same ritual, but for one of you it brings life and the other it brings death. And one has to be sensitive to what one needs, Anyway, Mary says, "Get to London, we need you." I was just close there. I was in Lincoln a couple of weeks ago. You should have been in Lincoln. Um, yeah, Justin's asking the question that I, to be honest, was supposed to be talking about, but haven't in the last one or this one, which is, what are some of the things that help facilitate a space that invite people who have these fears to unravel, right? That's actually what I want to be doing on these Facebook Lives, but I'm talking theoretically. But, I mean, very simply, like, this is indirect communication. It's that comedy. I saw Louis C.K. talk about death for 45 minutes one time, and it was so funny and it was so brilliant about a middle-aged guy facing his own finitude. But at the end, I realized that I had been touched by that, and actually it helped me look at those things. Good sermons and good stories and good music does it. Inviting the local singer-songwriter from the local coffee shop who sings beautifully about life, love, and loss, bringing them in and asking them to sing something, talking about the Psalms, where there is suffering and pain and unknowing as part of the whole thing. There are great resources to enable people to do this. You don't confront people directly. If I look at you and I see you're being nasty to your mum, and I say, "Look, you're being nasty to your mum, you're an asshole," your defense mechanisms come up and you're like, "No, I'm not. My mum's a nightmare. If you knew what she was like, you'd understand." But if I bring you out for a drink, sit down with you and go, "Oh man, you seem a bit stressed. Are you okay?" You're likely to go, "Yeah, and to be honest with you, I really took it out on my mum. I feel a bit bad. I should really say sorry." So the difference is, if I directly confront you with your doubt or your unknowing or your bitterness or resentment or anything, what it is, if I direct you protect yourself. You can't help it, even if you think I'm right. But if you can indirectly bring it up through music and art and poetry, bring it to the surface, then the person can more easily face those things. And so I do want to start doing teaching for people who want to do this in practice, in actual communities. And Building on Fire, my Building on Fire events are kind of like that. But it's hard to get to. I only do one a month. So I understand if you're nowhere where I will be close to. Okay, let me see. The problem is our liturgies have become safe in a world desperate for meaning. Liturgies, because if you're saying, liturgies become, everything becomes reified over time, and so you have to kind of like mix things up. I'll finish there. I don't want to bore you. Although of course you can always sign out, but I will be watching you. You're not allowed to do that. But we've covered, the call of the other and our responsibility to the other in the last one. This Facebook Live, I just wanted to introduce the idea of thinking about rituals and liturgies that help to draw out the things that we're dealing with and confronting. Because you know what? Everybody around you in any group, anywhere in the world, are having battles, great battles. They're fighting with insecurities and pain and lots of things. And, sometimes we try to bury those things so that we just get migraines and fatigue and bad backs and outbursts of anger or tears. But eventually we go, right, we're going to have to bring this to the surface. And I was just talking about how can liturgies do that, and how can liturgies help us see that unraveling can be raveling. I also just want to tell you that if you are interested in these ideas, then I have a whole 4 or 5 days in Ireland once a year where 50 of us come together for a festival called Wake. And I call it Wake because a wake in Ireland is a type of ritual around a death. It's a ritual where you remember what has died. What do you call it? Cheers it. You kind of like toast to the death. You mourn and you move on. And so Wake is a place where people who maybe their religious fundamentalism has begun to die, or they've moved on to a different community, something else has died, someone they know has died, and they want a space to work that through. Wake provides that. We have artists, musicians, we do pub crawls and street art tours, and we just spend those 4 days together, 5 if there's a pre-event as well. And so if you're interested in that, look on my website, go onto my Facebook, you'll find more information. This will be year 5, so it's the 5th anniversary of Wake. I still keep it to 50 because I like to keep it really, really small and intimate. And apart from that, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, I'll be out there. I leave in a few days. And I'm also doing some stuff in Detroit and LA coming up. So keep an eye on all of those things. I appreciate you clicking in and listening to me wax lyrical about these issues. Tomorrow or the day after, next couple of days, I'll probably do a part 3 to this. I'll maybe stop there. I'm not sure. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.